All seen, yeah.
Yeah. All right, ready?
Yep.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining us in this special content that we're bringing to you as a result of Benfica's 118th year anniversary. My name is Alfredo Fumaças. With me, as always, Cristiano Oliveira. We're very excited about the guest we're bringing you tonight. He is a man that has his name etched in Premier League history as not only the first player to score an official goal, but the first player to score an hat trick in the Premier League history. He has 3 caps for England. At Benfica, he arrived in the middle of the 97-98 season, appeared in 24 games, scored 8 goals, wearing the number 28 for that season. We're very excited, ladies and gentlemen, Brian Deane. How are you, Brian?
I'm good, thanks. How are you guys? All right?
Doing great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for taking the time and speaking to us here a few minutes. It's an absolute pleasure. Every time we get to talk to a former Benfica player here on Benfica Independent, Benfica podcast, it's exhilarating. So thank you very much. And thank you for considering Benfica at the time. Those were not the best times for Benfica. And you had the guts to bring your talents over to Lisboa and try to help us out. And, every time we did something good, you made us proud. You gave us a reason to smile. And there weren't a lot of reasons to smile at the time. So thank you very much, Brian. And once again, I like to kick things off, with the one question that everybody's, wondering. How did the opportunity arise of you joining Benfica? Is this something that was in the works? Had you thought about this before? Did an opportunity like this arise before, or just spur of the moment? How'd this come about?
So I, when I left Leeds United, I went back to Sheffield United, but I nearly went to Holland to play for Feyenoord, but the deal wasn't right for me and I didn't feel comfortable. So I went back to Sheffield United. But previous to that, I'd almost gone to Italy in 1990, and then there was some interest from France as well, but it never materialised. And I always kind of really wanted to go and try my luck abroad because, I was a guy who fell in love with the World Cup, and especially, the Brazil team of 1982. There was just something about playing in a different country that appealed to me, and I felt that my style would actually suit playing abroad. Although, people very stereotypically sort of like look at me at 6'3" and think, well, he's just a guy who you put in the box, But my game was a lot different to that. I was quite mobile. I used to like to run with the ball. So yeah, it was. When the opportunity came to Benfica, I mean, look, everybody knows Benfica, For me, it was a case of, well, obviously there was some nerves because I knew how big the club was, but it was, for me, it was a case of now or never, and I didn't want to pass an opportunity up that was actually solid in front of me and then have regrets later on in my life. Did I know what I was getting into? Not necessarily so, but, as a player, you just think about football. You don't think about the politics. And, certainly I was 29 at the time.
Yeah.
And, for me, it was about, making stories. So it wasn't hard from that point of view. I knew the English league. I knew that I could cut it. But it was about trying something else. And we don't get a lot of players from our country actually go and play abroad. And, that's where I felt that, I wanted to be a little bit different.
Yeah. Did you at the time Graham Souness was the coach for Benfica? Did you get a chance to speak to Graham Souness? And what did he tell you in terms of what kind of role and how you could contribute to this Benfica team?
So I met Graham just for talks, really, on the day that I signed. And, he said, look, the club and the team is woefully underperforming. And, I feel that there's an opportunity. I think at the time we were in about 7th or 8th place in the league. Yep. And for me, it was, look, when you have a club like Benfica and they're in that kind of position, there's always something wrong and it needs a change. And yeah, I think Graham kind of saw me as somebody who was a different kind of problem to, what players were used to playing against at the time. And that was quite reassuring. Graham's somebody who everybody respects because of what he's done in the game. So the fact that he was an English manager, a British manager, made me feel comfortable. So yeah, it was. I thought, look, it's an adventure, it's an opportunity. I can always go back to England, and so yeah, it was no issue for me really.
Now, Brian, before joining Benfica, you're a guy that obviously had tremendous experience in the Premier League, as Alfredo mentioned, scoring first goal, hat trick. You had success in that league. He played in such beautiful stadiums as the old Wembley, Old Trafford, Anfield, just to mention a few. With that in mind, what was your first impression of Stadio da Luz, the old one, and and overall your first impression of Lisbon and the whole team when you arrived?
Yeah, I mean, look, as a guy, I don't know what it's like now, but it was, one of the famous stadiums. Of course, when it looks different when it's full.
Yeah.
We trained and it was quite dilapidated, but I remember looking around the stadium and thinking, wow, you can get 100,000 people in here, and like I said, when that stadium was full, it was bouncing, so it was, obviously, yeah, I was in a very comfortable place, going to places like Newcastle, Liverpool, Arsenal, Manchester United. I had no idea what the stadiums would look like in Portugal, but again, for me, it was an opportunity to kind of further develop myself, I suppose, as well.
Yep.
Yep. I don't think that. Well, there's no need because everybody chases the money here in England, and don't get me wrong. When you think about who you're playing against, I just felt that it was something I couldn't turn down because it's like going and playing for AC Milan. Yeah. It's like going and playing for Atletico Madrid, Barcelona. It's the same. Real Madrid, it's the same thing. You don't go to think about what stadiums you're going to play in. You're going to go to play for the club.
Right.
Now, Brian, let me ask you a quick question before Alfredo jumps in. When you made the decision to join Benfica, did some of your teammates, some of your colleagues in the Premier League, did they think you were crazy, or was there a lot of attention on you at that time, or did everybody look at it as a great opportunity for you?
You don't talk to people. It was my decision. I was the one who ultimately I could have turned it down. I could have stayed at Sheffield United, and I would have been playing back in the Premier League anyway. But I didn't know what to expect. I kind of, in many ways, I kind of joined and went through the process, kind of not knowing what to expect. It was just the fact that I was going out to Lisbon. I was playing in another country for one of the giants of European football. And I think that was, I'd already done everything from the point of view of playing at Anfield and Old Trafford. And this was going to be something else. I think the other thing that I've probably not mentioned that I should mention was my plan personally was to go from Benfica to maybe Spain or Italy anyway. And unfortunately that didn't work out, but I didn't want to go back to England at that particular time. I was on a kind of, I felt that, if I could do well in Portugal, then I could get another move perhaps into Spain. These were, I'm talking around the time when you had teams like Deportivo La Coruña who were very good. You had, there were lots of different teams that were very good at that time. And we were relatively, in Europe at the time, English clubs weren't doing so well. So I felt that it was perhaps an opportunity to go out there, go and play for a big club, and then perhaps come back at an even higher level in the country.
Yeah. Now, Brian, you arrived at a locker room with quite a few known footballers like Michel Prudhomme, Karol Poborski, João Pinto. What was your first impression of the squad and their quality?
Yeah, I mean, you've just mentioned a lot of those guys were internationals. Carlos Garmara as well, and you had the Moroccans, El Tahed and Bibi.
Yep.
So for me it was great because I thought, wow, I'm now playing with I felt that I was at that level, but I felt that also it was going to take a little bit of time to perhaps get used to the play and my teammates and everything. But I definitely felt I could play at a level. It was just a case of coming and settling in.
Now, you arrived and relatively quickly, you got thrown into the fire. You got thrown into a Lisbon derby, playing against Sporting. Tremendous victory, 4-1 by the Aguias. You got on the score sheet. Any memories of that game? Anything you still hold on to till this day?
Of course. I mean, like you say, it was a very hostile environment, but it was a brilliant game to play. The pitch was good. It was a Friday night. The ball was moving very quickly. We were passing the ball very well. Some good interchanging of passing. And I think that the main thing from my point of view was the goal that I scored. Because it was a kind of goal that I dreamt about. It was like, I talk about the '82 World Cup team, and to run through how I did and then just flick the ball over the goalkeeper and then run away was, it was, yeah. Those were the kind of people who inspired me. Kareka, Socrates. It was that kind of era of football that when you're playing in England, you always looked and thought, I think the Italian league was probably the strongest at that time.
Serie A.
And it was about as a player, you always want to challenge yourself against the best. You want to face the best players. I don't know if it's the same now, but we always wanted to challenge the best players, be around and conquer the best players. That was that's how we grew up as kids.
Yeah. That season you also faced Porto and scored in a 3-0 win by Benfica at Estádio da Luz. What do you recall that game? Because that was your first big game at Estádio da Luz, a clássico at Estádio da Luz. What do you recall from that game against Porto?
Well, we totally dominated them. Again, it was a beautiful day. The stadium was relatively full, and it was one of the best goals I've ever scored. It was for me. It was living that dream that I'd mentioned to you before about scoring those types of goals on a European platform, and these are the kind of things that when I look back, it's not just about financially, it's about what dreams you take to the grave, what you remember about when you pull the shirt on. And without those memories, I could have had 9 months of just playing in a Premier League team. Anything could have happened. But I have memories of kind of, coming and playing in a full stadium in front of, one of the big games in Europe and scoring a goal like I did. I mean, we don't always blow our own trumpet, but when I look back and I look at the goal that I actually scored that day, it was magical for me personally, and nobody will be able to take that away from me ever.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Porto, Benfica, and Porto and Sporting, I should say, Benfica's been battling these guys for a long time. Huge rivals. Did someone at the club, as you joined, did they explain to you about these rivalries? Did you get some type of pep talk, or it was just you're on your own, you figured it out on your own that these were the teams that you had to beat in front of you?
Well, we always know that it's more or less a 3-horse race in Portugal, but So, like I said, I've played in big games. I played for my country. Kaupa Borsk. It's. I think the most nerve-wracking thing about playing for Benfica was on the way to the game. Yeah, and the coaches go into the stadium, and there's nothing but Benfica fans there. Yeah, and you're literally driving down the street on the coach, and all the fans are clapping, and that's responsibility right there.
You give me the goosebumps. You give me goosebumps, buddy.
That is the scariest thing for me. It wasn't anything else. It was the expectation of the fans. They were all, come on, come on, come on, and you're like, can't let anybody down. And I could visibly see the players. We were like, it was like, can't let these people down. And we always had more supporters in the stadiums than the home team. And, that was a lot of responsibility, and you needed character. You needed character to come through those situations. I learned pretty quickly because, the journalists could be quite brutal. I literally, like you say, I got thrown into my first game, and I think we drew 1-1, and I think I set up Erwin Sanchez to score our goal.
Campo Maiorense.
That's right, yeah. And I didn't know what to expect. The pitch was terrible. It was muddy, small, and all of a sudden now I've got defenders trying to foul me anytime I went near the ball. Never mind, got a touch of the ball, and it was brutal. And after the game, I remember the journalist came up and they asked me some questions about They said something about my touch and stuff, and I was thinking, well, I don't even know my teammates. We don't speak the same language, and you're talking to me about English players not being as good technically as Portuguese players, and it was really, really tough because I thought, well, I don't know anything about the tempo. I don't know anything about what kind of space you have to make for yourself. I just I didn't even know all the names of my teammates. I hadn't memorized them yet, so it was tough.
Yeah, of course. What other memories do you have of Portugal and that time that kind of stuck out to you, even though it might be a meaningless memory for somebody else, but for you has always stayed with you?
Listen, nothing was meaningless about my time in Portugal. It was, I think, just playing football in that climate. Living by the beach. After training, I usually used to go to one of the restaurants by the sea, and I'd have grilled sea bass with garlic, butter, potatoes, and I'd just be sat there with my sunglasses on, and I'd be thinking, this is like, I don't believe this. I'm in the t-shirt in January, February, and I was thinking that, what's the catch? And so, I have nothing. Look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that everything went brilliantly well, because there were some issues in the club. But as I've got older, I've learned to kind of cherish certain things, and they say youth is wasted on the young, because when you are older, you get time to reflect and understand the moments that you were in. And, those were great moments, even though there were a lot of issues going on in the background. And, there were some people who shouldn't have been involved in the club there, but were. I can't complain. I ended up having a very long career, and that was part of my career as well.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you like to go out to restaurants in Portugal, and it brought back a memory. If I don't recall, I think there was a story about this not too long ago in one of the Portuguese papers about a story that you were out having a good old time, and Benfica fans approached you and they kind of told you should go home. I guess there's an important game coming. Is there any truth to that story, or am I just making things up in my head?
No, it's a true story, but I was injured anyway.
Okay. So,
I'd ruptured my plantar fascia.
oof, I had that happen too. Painful.
Yeah, and so I'd gone out, I think, for some food, I think on a Friday, and I was in Dockers,
Dockers, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I remember it was either there or I was in Bocco doing Furno. It was one of them two anyway. And I remember, a fan came up and says, "Oh, Mr. Deane." I says, "Oh, hi." And he went, yes. He looked at his watch and he went, you should be home. I was like, well, yeah, but the thing is, I didn't really understand. I'd heard that, players abroad don't go out; they live a monk type existence, and I took that on board. I mean, looking back, I wasn't doing any harm. I was just having some food and stuff. But it was the kind of what the Benfica fans expected from their team, and I was a guest in the country, and I had to give a good impression. At the end of the day, I wasn't just representing me; I was representing, English football and English people, and I was So that's I've always had that attitude. That was my mum and my dad always kind of. They made me, I always had to have this kind of responsibility, and I would never kind of tarnish the respect for the club at the time. It just wasn't the kind of person I was.
Could have been worse, Brian. Could have been in the iPhone era with the camera phones, and then your picture would have been all over the. You know what I mean? So
yeah, but I wasn't doing anything.
You weren't doing anything wrong. Yeah, exactly. That's a great story, though.
Yep.
Benfiquistas, some of them take it to the extreme, and that was a funny one. Yeah.
Yeah. Brian, you left in October of '98, 9 months after you arrived. Was there any interest to remain at the club? Was the return to the Prem something a little bit more appealing to you? You have already said there was some things going on internally with the club's directive, so I don't know if that was one of the catalysts to you want to leave.
Yeah, it was a catalyst, to be honest. It was. I think I'd got, myself and the other players. It was. They just didn't want. We didn't ever get paid.
Yeah.
We used to find ourselves in a situation where we never got paid for a month, and sometimes we would, we'd go out and we'd be like playing, and like our wages were so late, it was a joke.
Yeah.
And I think I got to the point where I thought I've had enough, and rather than sort of like looking to move and go to Spain or where, I thought, I just need to go back home because I'm putting so much effort in, and I just feel like these, the club's taking the mickey.
Yeah. Understandable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's very unprofessional on their part. What were some of your favorite things, some of the unique things you found in Portugal? Did he freeze?
A little bit. Ooh.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Benfica Independente. Alfredo, Cristiano. Hopefully he jumps back in and we can continue this lovely chat.
It's not live.
Oh, no, I know, but I thought you were going to post the link to the video. Okay.
Yep, there we go.
Cool.
Did I say something wrong?
No.
No.
You spoke the truth. They didn't pay on time. They cut you off.
You never paid on time.
That's crazy. That's
Just
crazy.
1 second.
Sure. We only got a few more.
Yeah, go ahead, Christian.
Brian, what were some of the unique things you found about Portugal? Is there something that sticks in your mind to this day?
Besides the weather.
Yeah, and
besides
and the
work.
fish with butter, potatoes. Yeah, because like before you gave me the goosebumps, now you're making me hungry. I mean, Brian, this is
Listen, I love, you know what, right? I mean, I just love the culture out there. I love the fact that you have black people, white people, and it doesn't, the mix is, it just seems natural, you know. And that was one of the things that made me settle pretty quickly, the kind of olive skin of people. And, I just felt that I felt at home, if I'm honest, you know.
Yep.
And I've often said to my wife, I could quite easily go and live in Portugal. I couldn't live in Spain. I could quite easily live with the culture in Portugal,
Yep.
because I feel that I would feel quite comfortable.
Yep.
So it has great memories for me. And like I say, the people and the demeanor of the people. One guy I've kept in touch with is Paulo Madeira, and Paulo's a great guy. He's got such a cool way about him, and he opened his house to me when I was studying for my pro license, and it was it's just nice, you know.
Yep.
I remember when I was there, and when I first started traveling back home. I would miss home, and then, after about 3-4 months, it just flipped, and I couldn't wait to come back to Portugal. Do the food, I used to have the peri peri chicken up in Cascais. There was a lovely Italian restaurant there, and it was just great. I was over there on my own at the time. My girlfriend at the time had, she'd stayed, but it's just a great place, being by the sea. I can't look, I can't sort of like turn around here and say that, that everything was right about football, but
Yeah.
it was the level of anxiety when playing was good, because I learned a lot about crisis management, crisis in the middle of a game. I was fortunate that I had my strike partner was one of those guys who could score, nothing could be happening, and then 30 seconds later, the ball was in the back of the net. And if you're a forward, you need somebody to help to take the pressure off you. Nuno was that player, he was, it was amazing playing with him. And, I think we had a really good connection. So, when you're scoring goals, for me, if I was scoring goals, it wouldn't matter where I was. I could have been on the moon, but it was just great being in a place, playing for a club that I could be proud of, a club where, coming back to England, I'd done things that people wouldn't dare to do. Players like to be in their own comfort zones, and I'd come out of my comfort zone, and I'd come to Portugal, and I'd played for the biggest club over there, and I was doing well. I was building a reputation. I was scoring against the top teams, and I think that it was about. I understand when you go abroad, you have to earn the respect, and that was one of the things that meant a lot to me, to get the respect of the fans and the players and the people, so that was very important to me, and it was it's part of my football journey. I think it was just how my parents brought me up.
Yep.
Yep.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. Brian, favorite Portuguese dish?
I've already told you, man. That's sea bass, grilled sea bass, man, by the sea.
Can't beat that.
Closely followed by the piri piri,
Frank
But
churrasco.
I also I had a thing that I think I became addicted to, because they went when I was there. I used to live right next to the casino in Estoril, about 5 minutes drive in Cascais, and They bought these. They bought the chef over from where is it? It's near Thailand. It's a former Portuguese colony.
Oh,
Goa?
Macau.
Macau. Yeah.
And I used to go. Oh my God! I used to get a takeaway. Man, that food was something else. And it got embarrassing because I'd be up there. Sometimes I'd be up there nearly every day. I'd be like, "Yeah, it's me again." Oh man, it was great food.
That's fantastic. Good. I know you mentioned you still stay in contact with Paulo Madeira. You mentioned Nuno Gomes. Do you stay in contact with Nuno or any other of your former teammates at Benfica during that time?
I think it's more or less Paulo and Nuno. We stay in touch on Instagram every now and again. We'll like each other. We'll ask how we are and so on. Of course, Nuno came and played in England for a while as well. Had a great career, and I followed him. But it's just nice to see that your teammates are doing well. People don't realise that it's a really tough career, football. You get, it's like an iceberg. You only see 1/5 above the water. There's a lot going on, and as a player, it's tough trying to live up to the your kind of persona every day. You have off days, but you can't afford to have these off days.
Yeah. But when was the last time? I'm assuming that you still follow the club, albeit maybe a little bit from a distance and loosely. But when have you been to the new Stade de Luz?
Yes, I came. I can't remember who the game was against, but I came over. God, it was a while ago. Was it Victor Setúbal? I came over and I came over and watched the game. With Paulo, and they treated me really well. I mean, they've got a fantastic lounge. The club is the stadium is fantastic, and they really look after the players, and it's a really good atmosphere. I don't know if it's changed or not, but the seats were good. The stadiums, it was just a great experience, and I hope to get over there again sometime. I really want to come and have a look. Maybe take my wife, and just have a little sort of like few days in Cascais and maybe Lisbon, and because for me it's almost like going back home. It's part of my history, and of course I'd love to bring my kids there sometime and just show them where I was, and it's because I became a father quite late, so my kids won't really understand what I did and the time and so on. I've still got my jerseys and so on, but by the time my son grows up, I'm gonna be he's there'll be such a distance that it'll just be kind of videos. That's why I asked you guys to sort something out for me so that he knows what his papa did, so
we're working on it. We're working on it, Brian.
Correct.
But listen, I'm gonna propose something. Whenever you go to Portugal, whenever you decide to go to Portugal, you let us know. We'll do this live and in person at a cafe. We'll get all the Benfiquistas to come out. We'll take pictures. We'll organize this. Maybe you take us. We take us to Cascais. We take you to the fan base. You know what I mean? So I think it's a good deal. It's a good deal. We drink some cold ones. Eat some snails. You like caracois?
No, I don't. The snails not gonna happen. Man.
I'll eat the snails. Don't worry about it. You drink the beer. I'll eat the snail. But we could arrange some. I'm pretty sure Benfica Independente, we could arrange some. It'd be an absolute thrill to have you with us. Since you went to this game at Vitória Setúbal, my dad's hometown, by the way, one of my many hometowns. Alfredo tells everybody I got a lot of hometowns. Did you get an opportunity to go to the famed Seixal, the Benfica's academy, their practice, their training headquarters?
No. It's funny because as a guy, Pedro Marquez, yeah?
Yeah.
So me and Pedro did our A licenses together. And we, I keep meaning to, if I come over, I want to come and see Pedro. The last time I spoke to Pedro, I said, Pedro, so tell me about some of these youth players you got. I said, who's going to be the next player to go? And he said it'll be João Felix. And he said a couple of others. And, obviously Felix went to Atletico Madrid. Yeah, it's I can imagine they've got some fantastic players there, you know.
So add that to the list. We'll go have snails, beer, and then we'll go to Seychelles. We'll check out Seychelles and we get the tour. Look, we can do it all in one shot, Brian. You know?
Okay.
Brian, what memories do you have of the fan base?
I mean, it was, look, you know, it goes without saying, you know, the fans, they're crazy, but they're, you know, so passionate. It's, you know, I can imagine that half of Benfica's problems are that the fans are so passionate and want success so much that sometimes I would imagine if it was anything like then, you know, it's a lot of pressure on players and you have to have the right characters to be able to produce, you know. It's, you know, Benfica is almost like, I remember there was, you know, in training every day, you know, the journalists were there, the pressure was really high. So, you know, this is a team that demands, and the fans demand, you know, they demand results. You know, I was fortunate enough to be in the company of Eusebio, and you know, what a guy. You know, it's like he was such a humble guy, and I almost, you know, I was like, I was scared to talk to him. I was scared to go near him. You know, I had that much respect for him that I was, and it was good. It wasn't. He had no airs and graces. He was just coming, see the guys. You know, he'd have some jokes. He couldn't speak English, of course, but I just kind of look at him and think, wow, that's the dude, man. I remember seeing some of the footage of him scoring goals, and you know, that's when Benfica was great. You know, the cup final, you know, the Manchester United games, and you know, so they have a lot to live up to, and it's whether or not they can find themselves in a position to kind of build teams that have the kind of characteristics that are going to give them success. It's not always easy because sometimes you know, there are easier options elsewhere. There are better options. You know, I know a little bit about management because I went into management for a little while as well. You know, and it's very important to get the right mentors around the place. You know, and it's not as straightforward as people think. You know, that side of the game. You know, sometimes the pressure's too much. Look, I had it myself when I joined Leeds, and for the first, you know, 2, 3, 4 months, I you know, I was struggling. I couldn't score. I wasn't scoring goals, and I used to get that horrible feeling when you're going into work and you don't like it, you know, in your gut. And I used to want to turn around, but you get through it. You know, you have to get through it. You have to, you know, I told myself, it's what's the alternative? You gotta. It's like, you know, if you back an animal up against the wall, it's going to come out fighting, and that's what I had to do. You know,
Yep.
it's and when you come through it, you become a man. You become more. You know.
Yep. Now, Brian, every little corner of the world, there's a Benfica fan. It seems at least like there's a Benfica fan. Have you ever been approached or recognized by Benfiquista and maybe in the UK, because there's a tremendous amount of them? You know, if you have, can you please share a little story about it?
Yeah, no, I went to. I remember I went to Mexico on a holiday one time, and I was having some food. And,
You and the food. You every time you're eating, Benfiquistas love to approach you. You can't eat.
So I'm in a restaurant, and there was a family came and approached me and asked for their picture taken with me. Said, "Oh, excuse me, Mr. Deane, can we have a picture?" I was so proud, you know, that I'd gone all the way to Mexico, and this Benfica, you know, I would have stayed there all night. You know, you don't understand, or people don't understand that, you know, for me, I'm just a normal person, and I was grateful. I was blessed to do something that I love doing. So to travel halfway around the world and somebody appreciate what I was doing and ask me for a picture, and you know, there'll be people there thinking, what's so special about him, or who is he, or whatever. I was milking it because, but it's true though. I mean.
And you're being humble. You're being humble. You're not a normal person. Normal people don't score against Sporting in Porto. Normal people don't wear the Monte Sagrado. So you'll forever be idolized in our book, man. So you're not a normal guy.
Yeah, but I mean, I grew up literally, getting soccer magazines. We used to have a magazine called Roy of the Rovers, and my dream was being on there was a thing where they used to be on the back page, it would say sign please. So, if it was Cyril Regis or somebody, the thought was that, if you played for your club, you would go and ask him to sign that picture. And I grew up thinking I want to be that guy. Yeah, when we were playing, we never thought about financial security. It was just a dream to play football. And then obviously things change, and as you get older and you get into your 20s and so on, you start thinking about, okay, I have a family, or I have a situation I need to take care of. And it becomes different. But football is I grew up, the 1978 World Cup, the 1982 World Cup, 1986 World Cup. I'm getting, Maradona, and I'm thinking I want to be like these guys,
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Brian, talk to us about your the company in which you're a founder and a co-founder and a chairman, which is Phoenix Sports Media Group. And actually one of your partners is Michael Thomas, also a Benfica alumni.
Yeah, the thing is that when you come to the end of your career and you reflect, and there are some things that in hindsight you wish were in place. And one of the things for us is that, players are very ill prepared for what happens after football. And, while you're there, you're a gladiator, you're out there, and everybody, you get your 90 minutes, and then, but what happens when you're away from there? And for me, in reflection, there was a lot of time where I could have done a lot more. I could have maybe studied. You don't know at the time, because realistically, the guys who are playing the games, they're still kids, and you're allowed to live this existence because all you're supposed to do is play football, train, buy a house, buy a car, spend money. And it's unrealistic because you never get exposed outside to what you're going to need from 35 onwards, So part of what we do is we arrange to do things with the alumni and some of the younger players at these clubs, so that to give them the skills, money management. It's basically a training company where the clubs will, we've been doing some things with Liverpool, for example. We were down at thank you, dear. We're down at Crystal Palace, because Crystal Palace are a club that have said, we want to look after our our young players coming through and give them second careers, and we've kind of where we're focusing now is cyber, so cyber and that kind of technology based careers as to move alongside football. So we are now looking to help train players, whether they're going to be a player for 20 years or whether they're going to be a player for 2 years. It's important because there's so many players that spat out of the system, and nobody really cares about them. Clubs don't care because, if you think about a club's, and this isn't a bad thing, but I'm saying a club has to focus on what they're doing, which is developing footballers. There is a huge gap in the background where, if players don't make it, they don't have a lot else, and then we talk about mental health problems, mental health, well-being. It's important that it's not just people out there, players have to cope. I'll give you a funny story. For example, I remember I went away with some friends on holiday, and we said, how do you feel when you've had a bad game? And we all came to the same conclusions, and we said, if I'm driving in my car and somebody pulls up next to me, and I try not to get in the same eye line as them, because I think they're going to be thinking I'm rubbish. Or when I go to the cash point, I put my hoodie up so that they don't recognize me. And it's, people will be surprised how fragile the confidence of players is. And all, for me, looking back, and I sincerely wish that clubs had the skills to help these men evolve into people. Not just think about what they get on a Saturday from these people. It's up to, you have to be a person who wants to actually succeed in life, though, So that's part of what, that's basically the majority of what we do. We set up training courses, looking after alumni. We're involved in cyber security. Our business has kind of changed a little bit. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know a lot about cyber, but it's a case of we have some very good connections, and there is a gap that we want to kind of make available, shall I say, to because when I'm talking about that side of it, it's things like esports. It's about you can train, and you can become somebody who can be a programmer, and you can earn good money. Anybody can do it. But I'm talking about looking after the football community, because no one really cares about the football community as such. People just want, it's like turnover. Football's about turnover all the time.
Yeah.
We have to prepare these young people because they have a long time, long time.
A lot of people that watch these games, they think that footballers are robots. But I was always told as a young kid that football's 10% physical, 90% mental. I never understood that. But as you get older, you start understanding a lot of it plays with your head. And so it's fantastic that you're taking the time out to educate and to support these athletes. Props to you, hats off. I think a lot of other people should do it as well. But, in today's day and age, that mental aspect of things is starting to become a bigger piece of the puzzle. And so thank you for taking the time out to address that.
I think just on that, I don't think that people are as robust as they used to be, and it's about adapting to what we have now, which is, it's not always easy for guys like us. I remember when I was managing, and I remember we lost the game, and after the game, I tore into the team because that's what used to happen to me.
Yeah.
And then the next day I had the general manager pull me in and say, "Oh, you can't talk to the players like that." And I thought,
yeah,
how are you going to get through to these players? It's war out there,
Yeah.
It's war.
Totally different.
Yeah, Brian's company is Phoenix Sports Media Group.
Check them out.
Yeah, check them out. More companies like yours should exist throughout the football world to provide support outside of the four lines for a lot of players, young and old. Brian, before I let you go, wanted to see if you could leave a message for the club and the fan base on your behalf for this 118th anniversary of Benfica.
Well, what can I say? First of all, I'm very proud of my association with the club. I'm very proud that I'm viewed as a part of the family, shall we say? Because believe me, it was an honor to kind of give it 100% every time. But I just they've just got to keep the faith. They have to be realistic. I think I would always say this about any of my clubs: as long as you give a transparent message to the fans, they can live with that. You give it. If you're gonna say, okay, we're gonna promise you the league when it's not attainable, then you're setting yourself up. So just give the fans an idea of what the long-term plan is. and make them feel part of the journey, you know. And I think that, you know, the fans just want to feel part of the team, you know. And Benfica is a club that can, you know, harness that quite easily, you know, and you know, get the message out, the perception of the message that you want out there. But yeah, listen, I sincerely wish the club the very best. I hope that, you know, I'm here in 118 years' time saying the same thing. Can't see it though.
Yeah, you could follow Brian on Instagram at Brian_Deane, on Twitter Dino Bry 1968 is where you can find and follow Brian Deane. Brian, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you very much. As two guys that grew up watching you play, watching you become part of that British armada with Scott Minto, Michael Thomas, Pembridge. It was all a real joy to watch. We do know that at that time the club wasn't in the best position in terms of directive and money, but thank you for being part of the club. Thank you for giving it all. And really, thank you for dignifying and respecting that jersey.
It's a pleasure, man. I've still got my jerseys, by the way. You know, they ain't going nowhere.
I was gonna say, if you have an extra one, send it over our way. You know what I mean? I'll wear it. Probably.
Gonna happen.
Hey, listen, I gotta shoot my shot. I gotta shoot my shot.
Listen, it's like I said to you guys, right? I have a 4-year-old boy, yeah, and one day I'm not going to be here, and it's important he knows who his daddy was.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Well said, my friend. Well said. Thank you very much for
Brian. Thank you.
Taking the time out, man. We wish you all the best of luck, continued success in everything you do off the field. Hopefully, if you get back into coaching, continue success in that as well. And you're always gonna have fans here on Benfica Independente. We're always gonna remember you. And so, as Alfredo said before, thank you so very much for dignifying our camisola the way you did. So,
yeah, I love you guys, man. Take care.
Thank you, Brian. Take care, man. Take care.
Take it easy.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.